you see that people are very happy about the healthcare system in the UK. All this NHS bashing is a little crap, because the doctors are very happy about the system and the patients are fairly happy about it too, you see. NHS is about equity, and I think other countries, like the States, if they pick on the UK, I think it's really crap. I think for doctors, the system, the NHS is not a bad system. You smile or you disagree?
No, I agree with that. I think NHS bashing is a difficult.
Okay, well, it's also a hobby of like Americans and the people who think that cancer death rates are the most important thing to done. So the United States, with all the expensive system, if you speak to a US citizen, they think they have the best doctors and a very good healthcare system. So it's a culture thing.
Any comments on the low score in Canada and in Holland on the patient-centered care? I think it's
amazing in Canada, because they have
very interesting.
Yeah. In Canada they have very much private doctors and a lot of nursing sort of community-led health centers. And maybe patients are not so happy about that. This was very much about what patients think about it. I don't really have a good explanation for that.
Well, one thing I think is very marked is that the old source for Britain, when patient-centered care, they're the worst.
Is
that could that be because of?
I would need to go see what they asked and who they asked before I genuinely come.
That's always the difficulty with these rough sort of surveys.
One explanation might be that we have introduced lots of new profession as healthcare assistants, operators, so it's a new team, and we need to readjust the criteria for what's patient-centered in the new team. The patient needs to learn that a new team has a different portion of the patient-centered care than before, when it was focused on the doctor only. So these criteria to evaluate patient-centered care need to be refined to adjust for this new team.
Patients' happiness is a very difficult sort of outcome measure. I know, I agree. Okay.
Can I just ask you a question? Sorry. Do you know how many people responded to this survey? Because most of the Commonwealth surveys for Canada, and Canada is 10 different provinces with 10 different health systems, have 34 people responding in one province, and that's regarded as Canadian data. So I'm really concerned.
This was a huge study with many thousands of patients per country. So.
Well, the 2009 Commonwealth study had 34 respondents from Ontario, so I worry about the validity of the data. Yeah.
Although okay. We'll did I skip one? Yeah. Okay, we did one experiment on pay for performance in Holland. It's done by UK Prospect, so you can ask her, she's in conference. And she did a practice, 65 practices, and there it improved quality. So that's in line with your research findings. The data collection is cumbersome. We had a different rewarding system. You see, we rewarded each portal. So 25% got very little, and the best 75% got a little more. So it was some, but it wasn't much. It was between 88 cents and 2.5 euro per patient. So if you had 2,000 patients, the maximum would be about 5,000 euros. Well, which is it's nice if you can get that extra. If you do that, if you do well, you see. The confidence intervals at the practice level were low, which is important to see because that adds to the feeling of injustice, as well as the case mix correction, which was not done, but would have been maybe necessary. There was quite a bit of discussion over the results. So that's why did I put that last year? Quite a bit of discussion about the results. This payment system, like you remember the slide yesterday of the body that was pulled in 4 parts, payment systems are splitting agents. And I think that's an important characteristic that you have to include if you advise people to start paying doctors differently. Anyway, it stopped in Holland, and primary care was contracted at the group level, so many hundred practices you see contract diabetes care, etc. So this is important because in the group, the doctors were correcting each other. So that's better than an insurance company does that, or when you do that with payment. So if somebody was the bad guy, and there would be somebody saying, well, you should do better because otherwise our total group doesn't get enough money. So what you pay for is a lot. Is getting a lot. In the Dutch system, we pay for spirometries and EKGs, etc. in this kind of care things, and that's about 50 euro for a spirometry and 50 euro for an EKG. It's quite a bit of money. So that has gone up enormously. And that's what insurance companies now are reconsidering, you see. Maybe we should have a capitation fee for offering EKG or a spirometry, but not pay for each spirometer or EKG. And I think it should be a mix again. If you offer echography, you should get a certain amount of money because you need such an expensive apparatus. But you should only get a very tiny bit of money if you do an echo, so that you don't overdo it. And we saw, and this is very important, we see, but I don't have data on that, that it leads to a loss of intrinsic motivation. You see, people are constantly doing CME and group meetings on diabetes care, on organizational matters, and they forget to do CME on basic general practice care. That's a bit of the, so intrinsic motivation, this is extrinsic, you see, they are now learning for what they can get money for. And that's a bit of a, and it bears self-determination, you see. It was so nice that a doctor in his practice could say, well, this is important, this is what I do. It could be wrong at some points, but at least that self-determination gave a very good feel. And that's a bit, I think those two have, in line with the research, have been lost. I think transparency has always benefited family medicine. So I would stick, I think good for professionalism is to have the transparency organized. And it should be paid for, and it should be easy, it should be supported by the computer. And it should be rewarded to some point, tiny bit, as you said. And there should be standardization necessary to avoid bureaucracy and also to avoid difficulties with collecting data and comparison. We have to realize that a substantial part of family medicine can never be measured. And processes rather than outcomes should be rewarded. That's a little bit not in line with what you said, but we are a little afraid that if you take that blood pressure, we've seen it, that all of a sudden 130, 80 was the favorite blood pressure in the, so doctors tend to measure towards the points that are advised. The core of primary care should be paid as a capitation and be paid for performance in other kinds of work. That's a little.
Can I just come back to the part that you said a substantial part of family medicine cannot be measured? I would dispute that. It can be measured the way we are measuring the indicators today. But if we develop different methods of measurement, it can be measured. We just haven't decided we want to measure these yet.
You may be right. I'll just avoid the discussion because you may be right, but it'll be difficult.
It's not easy.
It's not easy, and then it's the question is
just because it's not easy doesn't mean to say it can be measured.
It's maybe not worth that, but I would correct it. So what are my two recommendations? You see, two things that would increase professionalism is if you have data plotting you on the Gauss curve. And that's what I did with my practice visits in Holland. And the amazing thing is that they have been abandoning it. The thing is, doctors like to tick off that they're good on a subject and not so much discussing the fact that they're low or high on the Gauss curve and that quality improvement is moving that Gauss curve to the right. So somehow that's not incentivized. They have stopped incentivizing assessment groups in Holland. And the pharmacotherapeutical assessment groups in Holland, the audit groups, the quality circles, have been very successful. And if you hear Joachim Stezengi on his quality circus in Germany, that's very successful. I think that's what we should incentivize. And it should be incentivized not only on pharmaceuticals, but also on diagnostic procedures. And that has been researched in Holland, and it reduced enormously the unnecessary diagnostics. And I think that specialists in hospitals should do that the same, because 2 to 3 billion euro is spent unnecessarily by unnecessary diagnostics. And you never see specialists sit together and discuss it with each other, what they do redundantly. So that's something I'm still very much in favor of, and I would incentivize that. And how do you incentivize that? By paying these measurements institutes to hire staff to help these doctors to get their data and to discuss the conclusions. That's what I would suggest. And the second thing is that I did research myself on with the practice visit data on how much patients would be ideal for good care. You see. And we used 3 measures: the job stress, workload, and chronic care things. And we did a regression analysis on it. And the interesting thing was that the overall time of the doctor spent on patients, that's including CME, including his talks with his staff, etc., was highly 4.00001 related to the number of patients. So that means that from every patient over 2,000, normally in Holland is 2,500, that from 2,000 every patient extra decreased the care in a linear line, more or less. So that's pure evidence that you should not incentivize doctors having to have more than 2,000 patients, which is common sense, which we all know. Well, in every Scandinavian country is normal, but in Holland somehow nobody. The thing is that the doctors are not really convinced that they should go for it, because if you go back to 2,000 patients, their income would fall. And the politicians are not so happy about it, because if they have more doctors, it's probably more expensive. So there, from 2 sides, this is blocked. Although patients should actually say, well, there's evidence that we need more doctors per patient, and should go for that. Anyway, I come to my last slide, and this is the evidence about how you should incentivize professional and professional GPs. And that's, you see the CPD and CME, you should incentivize CME, you should incentivize sharing information with patients. The consultation length, or the amount of doctor per patient, that's the thing. Practice size. And training stages. I hope to publish a paper on, also with the practice visit, that training practices are significantly doing better on all items of care. So it's good to become a training practice, although that's, there was an association, there wasn't a causative relation, but you can imagine that being a training practice is a very good thing. Well, the managerial factors that should be incentivized are audit activity and other interventions, as I showed you, financial incentives, and they should invest in people management. That means that a practice should have time to have meetings with their practice, patient meetings, etc. That's now not incentivized, and that's bad for care, I would say. And well, the guidelines and the presence of recall system data recording, that's about ICT guidelines. That's something I take for granted now. But I think this is sort of an overall picture I've been saying, and I hope that now we are going to work in groups, that we're going to think what has priority in our country, and what can be achieved in our country if we want to change this. Thank you. So, well, the message to groups is never clear, you see, so you maybe should make it clear. We have, it's already 5 minutes, so I think we should do 20 minutes till 11:45 and then go plenary again. And have 20 minutes to discuss each table what is an ideal QoF, or what is an ideal pay for performance system. How do we want it in our country? And that we have a inventarization in the last 15 minutes. Is that all right?